gotta learn to play it right. You got to know when to hold up.
In my previous video about Kenny Rogers, which I've included in the description below, I talked about Kenny Rogers' first musical career as lead singer of the country rock band named First Edition. In this video, I'll talk about how Kenny Rogers went from broke and out of work after First Edition broke up to truly becoming an international superstar in country and pop music. Now, First Edition started in 1966 and had hits like Just Dropped In and Ruby, Don't You Take Your Love to Town before breaking up in 1974. Now, even as a boy, Kenny Rogers preferred, or rather loved, singing in groups. He loved the harmonies and the camaraderie that came with a band. But in 1975, after First Edition dissolved, for the first time in his singing career, 37-year-old Kenny Rogers was unemployed. Before this, he had never left one group without already having a job in another. But not this time. This time, Kenny Rogers was out of work. And to make matters worse, his third wife of 10 years, Margo, was on her way out. The divorce was very ugly, and rather than fight and tear the family apart even more, Kenny agreed to give up any custody of his son. That decision would haunt Kenny the rest of his life. And not having a family or a home, Kenny spent most of his time in hotels in Los Angeles, where First Edition had been based. For the first 2 years after the band's breakup, Kenny Rogers barely worked. He could go solo, but he hated that idea. When he did occasionally sing in public by himself, it seemed like all of his 20 years of musical experience and talent just abandoned him immediately. When he realized it was just him on the stage by himself, with every eye on no one but him, he could hardly even walk. Now, Kenny Rogers hated singing solo, but really, what choice did he have? So what was a broke, almost middle-aged singer with no available career opportunities supposed to do? Well, Kenny decided to go to Nashville. Why Nashville? No particular reason other than he had seemingly run out of ideas in Los Angeles, so why not try something new? Now, it didn't take Kenny long to find a tenuous foothold in Nashville, but it was still a big fall from where he used to be with First Edition. He wasn't singing in front of big crowds and appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show. Instead, he was traveling from lounge to lounge, opening for other acts, barely covering his own expenses. He had to suffer indignities such as letting his band go when work slowed down, and once being introduced as Kenny Rankin. One day when Kenny Rogers looked at himself in the mirror, what he saw was Kenny Rogers, lead singer of First Edition. Now, if you remember from the previous video, Kenny really wanted to join First Edition back in 1966. But the other band members thought he was too old at 29. They wanted a young, hip, edgy band. So Kenny decided to change himself. He grew his hair out, put in an earring, and started wearing rose-colored glasses everywhere, which worked fine while he was the lead singer of the country rock band First Edition. But Kenny was almost 40 years old now, and that look just wasn't cutting it in Nashville. So Kenny took out the earring, threw the glasses away, and cut his hair. As he says, for the first time in a decade, the real Kenny Rogers was staring back at him. Hey, I just wanted to say thanks for watching this video. This Stories of Country Music YouTube channel is growing by the day. We're getting new subscribers every single day, and you can help this channel grow even more by liking this video and subscribing, which simply lets YouTube know people are watching, and they will boost the videos more. So if you don't mind liking and subscribing, I'd certainly appreciate it. Now, back to the story. So for about 2 years after moving to Nashville, Kenny toured the country. He spent a good bit of time performing in the lounges of LA and the casinos of Las Vegas. And eventually, As is so often the case for big breaks to happen, immense talent has to meet a fortunate opportunity, and that's what happened with Kenny Rogers. One night in Nashville, he met a man named Larry Butler, who was the head of United Artists Records. Now, Larry knew about Kenny Rogers and his time in pop music. Executives at other Nashville labels shied away from Kenny, thinking that the country fans wouldn't really take to a pop star invading country music. But Larry was convinced Kenny could sing country music, and Larry had the final say. So, in 1977, at 39 years old, Kenny Rogers signed with United Artists Records out of Nashville. And for the first year, it seemed like Kenny's doubters had been right. His first album, called Love Lifted Me, did okay, but not much better than that. But then, Larry found this particular song that would vault Kenny Rogers into a national superstar. Kenny heard the song and recorded it immediately. That song was called Lucille.
You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille.
Lucille went to number 1 on the country charts and number 5 on the Billboard pop charts, and would go on to sell over 5 million copies. Now, Kenny says that after the massive success of Lucille, his whole life changed within weeks. He no longer had to search for music to record. Potential songs just came flooding in. He no longer had to convince the label to record the songs he liked. The label started recording whatever Kenny said. And most of the songs that Kenny recorded told a story. Many times a sad story. Much like First Edition's song Ruby. Kenny often wondered what it was about him that was attracted to these sad songs, and what it was about him that made people listen to his sad songs. But whatever it was, those story songs were going to take Kenny places he had never dreamed of going. In 1977, Lucille went to number 1. Daytime Friends and Love or Something Like It also went to number 1 that same year. And in 1978 and 79, Kenny had 4 number 1 hits, which included 2 of his most famous songs, The Gambler and Coward of the County. And the amazing thing about these hits was that they weren't just country hits. Pretty much every one of Kenny's hits between 1976 and 1980 also went to the top 10 on the pop charts. Kenny Rogers truly was a country pop crossover superstar. And when Kenny invited the Oak Ridge Boys to tour with him and Dottie West, Kenny Rogers headlined the biggest grossing tour in all of music for 3 years in a row. For the next 8 years, everything came up gold for Kenny Rogers. He kept making hit after hit, starred in the Gambler movie series, and captured award after award after award. Now, there are so many more Kenny Rogers stories to talk about. I want to go through his magical years of 1977 to 1985 in greater detail. There's his amazing work with Lionel Richie, and we haven't even mentioned his very close relationships and duets with Dottie West and Dolly Parton. And those are stories I certainly want to tell, but those are stories for another day.